policy and procedure book in place, and going to add this slide as one of the training videos, and thought we'd like to get some help from you guys as far as the deductions down and what you think is the information being a process of what ain't out there anymore, and that's what we used to call common sense not being common anymore. So we're going to try to throw out some things that are this is just a FYI, if you will, and a video that hope you enjoy it, and look forward to the comments. And if you do enjoy it, please like it and subscribe. We're gonna start up as doing our day in the life of an end dump driver. We are an end dump company. That is me up there, 2002 W900L Kenworth. Thank you, Kenworth, providing a good old truck. All right, without further ado, let's get started here. Alright, the objective we want to do is, the goal is simple and is what can be described in a word as evolution. Learning and sharing, making each step count in whichever direction progress has diligence forging while not losing sight of the desired result. Character is defined through history and reads that perception agreed that this perspective worked for all that applied the due diligence and honesty required to achieve this desired result equals anything attempted, which means pretty much if you stick to it and you're really wanting to get about it and you're honest and hardworking, that simply it does have results. The formula, what you're going to base your work off of to have it equals, is the collection of actions through due diligence built on the adjectives of your result, your dream, or an accomplishment you're wanting to achieve. This needing to be tweaked to obtain a desired or specific result through as safe, as quick, as cost effective. Now, you've seen that on the first slide. That is Dr. Drjjr Express LLC's company motto. We like to always look at what we're doing, and in one of the three, if not all three categories, we can reevaluate as safe and see if there's any improvement needed, which that's always a yes. As quick, well, it comes behind as safe because we don't want quick being looked at as anything unsafe. So quick would follow it, and then cost effective, meaning overall, I mean, we don't look at it with blinders on. We want to be able to step out of the box and evaluate the entire formula to know pieces that took time to gather didn't create variables that now have changed. So you always want to make sure that everything is tweaked down. Working the formula, is the due diligence required to get a desired result? If you're not going to put the work into it, then the result you're probably going to end up with isn't going to be the desired one, because we know any work we do will produce a result. Now, it being desired or not will be the result of, or the diligence put into it. It may require tweaking the formula to attain a specific result, and again, that's the variables within, and the adjectives known there would be from your result, you having the right side of your equals, meaning the product or result being. The result is the goal, the dream, the accomplishment. Perspective. Now, I want to speak of perspective here for a moment, especially everybody that's viewing this, to truly understand one's, meaning you. If you're an individual reading this right now, then this is how you are observing and would describe what you see and how you feel and how everything comes from watching this video. So one specific observation and description using adjectives familiar or suited to the one. And like I said, Dave, that comes in very important in the fact to where if you're given, whether it's an opinion or a fact, it's still yours unless you're quoting something or working off of somebody else's idea, correct?
Right.
Okay, so I would agree, or would you agree that, you know, the perspective that you have is unlimited? I mean, we're all entitled to perceive something however we want to.
Exactly.
All right. Now, perception, being a whole new animal that it is the sensory experience of the world. Now, this is more of a psychological way of approaching perception, but I think when you're dealing with your work, your formula, your goal, yourself, then you need to make sure that how others are seeing what you're doing is, you know, what you're indeed doing, because a lot of times there becomes an issue that your perspective is not what's being perceived. So I guess that'll lead us to making sure the perception aligns with the perspective. So always able to tweak that formula will give you the advantage of being able to know, or at least, you know, I won't use the word know, since perspective can be from an individual at any angle. So you just want to, again, look at it. If we were going to do the laws of average and say 80-20, well, you want to make sure the perception aligns with the perspective within 80% margin. Now, 100, if you're dealing with facts, right, Dave?
Right.
Accountability. Now, here's one that it only lacks that I've personally had to deal with in the actual part of experiences. You can tell it's italicized, hopefully. It's italicized because experiences goes back to, this entire thing is about the one, you, yourself, an individual. So experiences, the one experiences consequences for performances or performance or actions. And, you know, that's where accountabilities let us down sometimes, where, you know, a slap on the wrist is not really the experience demanded for the action or even the performance. You know, bad lies, bad demeanor, bad, you know, when you start getting into that side and you're having to have consequences for this, the accountability part seems to not stick to the definition of experiences, consequences for performance or actions. Now, one of the things in the formula that is, as you build your formula, you can get complexity to it. You can have a lot of variables that have to line up and working your diligence to get the result you're looking for. So SOP is a standard operating procedure. It is the how-to, and it's set through proven actions to get desired results. Now, a lot of times this is where you're going to run your little tests or your things, and it'll set the standard to get a result, and maybe that is a variable. It's not the answer, but it's a part of in your equation. A cog to the machine, if you will, being its little piece, and again, the standard already being proven, and that's why you're having procedures and to do it specifically a certain way. I mean, a lot of times we have guys say that, yeah, I'm following the SOP, and it'll be loosely, and I think the adjectives are where maybe the SOP's lacking if the result is still desired to be tweaked a little better, because your adjectives being specific will get you to your desired result, and adhering to this gets you the exact answer you're looking for. Now, things you should know, and I guess this is worded a lot better than, you know, kind of just common sense, but this is things you should know, and it's kind of the life experience, if you will. Confidence of character. I was a sports player growing up, as of was 90 to 99% of the America world. Don't mean it was actually sports being athletic. It could have been in your job, what you had to do, but all attributing to the same traits that equaled up to the sports. And you had a thing back then that was called being in the zone. And a part of being in this zone was the confidence of character. You was no longer thinking about what to do. You were doing what needed to be done. And that's a big part when it comes to really getting the desired result, is knowing that you're doing what should be done, and it's all factual. Also knowing what's understood. You don't want to find yourself in the scenario of taking on a project that you're assuming a lot of the understood parts. Be sure that when you're taking on a project, especially at work, and especially having layers of bosses and co-workers and even friends, whoever's involved, that, you know, knowing what's understood should be covered when you're covering the job description, if there's anything that would be, if you will, common sense. Strength has to be honest. And that's whether you're in strength of numbers, you're in strength of power, you're in strength. Anytime you're able to use your strength in your formula, it has to be honest for the desired result to be passed along and have standards like SOPs and different things written to, so it's a absolute. Now, on the bottom is because it's looked at in many different ways and many different adjectives used, but equality evolves everyone. And I mean, that's just simply put. You have the 3 E's here that will absolutely take out everything else. You want to put this personally as far as your formula. You don't want your formula to have any biases or any type of segregation of not being able to utilize as safe, as quick, as cost effective, and the only way those are applied is no holes barred. You need to make sure equality involves everyone, everything, all the time. Customer service. Now, customer service is one's experience or interaction with an entity. Now, the reason I'm using entity here is it means customer service is character, if you will, in another way of saying, and you just can say in a lot of ways how some people are built for the job, and you've heard how that's how a lot of times they were just made for this. Well, customer service is a thing that also you're over friendly in a lot of different ways can just be misunderstood. It goes back to knowing what's understood. So it has to be understood before finding oneself in a situation that becomes described in adjectives that do not represent one's perspective, no matter the perception being given. An understanding of this exercise below should help anyone in any situation to be able to gain one's understanding of a perception one feels as being false. Now, that's what I'm explaining is by, you know, saying exactly what you have been trained to say and the way you've been trained to say it has variables that sometimes you're aware and unaware of out of tone and tempo and how we're presenting oneself, and that unawareness can give a false perception and throw in where clarity's an issue. The table of enlightenment. This exercise will help one's mind with due diligence through evaluation to provide the customer's always right result. One understanding the why in a scenario that versus customer service will understand with satisfaction the result. Misunderstanding of how the customer is always right is the failure of understanding the why. Right and wrong allow degrees of perspective that can lead away from facts and results, giving a false perception. The table of enlightenment 2 is an exercise, and this exercise is non-judgmental. This exercise is a way for you, again, it's the one's self, to be able to get a glimpse of how things could be as they not appear to be. Imagine a golden oak table, 6 foot long, 3 foot wide. The table has a thick coat of polyurethane which is a high gloss material for furniture that makes it very shiny. There are 4-foot long shop lights hanging above the table, 8 feet in the air. The table is propped up on a 45-degree angle and lifted about a foot in the air. You line your closest friends and family around the table shoulder to shoulder. You get your phone and start the voice recorder as you walk behind each person surrounding the table and ask them what color the table is in their ears as they give the answer in your recorder. The deduction. This is what you should have on your paper when you get your recorder and you're ready to listen to it, because what this is going to do is give you some of the understanding of some perspectives and perceptions. And again, for you to understand it, not to judge it and not to draw your conclusion, but to understand. So the deduction. Question: what color is the table? Answer: golden oak. Question: what colors were told to the recorder? Answer: the perspective from the position of the individual. Question: who lied? Now, before we go to the answer that you're already reading and getting ahead, the thing that you need to understand on who lied is from the fact of just sitting there and answering what you told them to do, and a lot of people saying that you didn't say do anything else. It was not understood for anything other than give you a color of what the table looks like that's in front of them, and from what they see is what they give you. So there's not a lie. But as you have seen through life, that sometimes what you're saying, no matter how true and how that is, if you were to put yourself in a courtroom, anyone not saying golden oak would be lying. Now the answer, is it right or wrong, or is it lack of due diligence? Because now, if we can decide that the answer is not on a right or wrong basis, but it's on the lack of due diligence because it wasn't understood that you should always go and verify the answer when somebody's asking you a question, or apply I do not know, and then you wouldn't have the right or wrong effect to be so wrong today by letting perception weigh judgment on a lack of diligence by an individual that didn't know it was understood that they could have went and got a piece of the table, had it analyzed by an expert, and given the answer golden oak to return to the recorder to give the correct answer for the question of what color it was. The advantage of understanding this will allow for a better understanding of the why of an issue with customer service or any of the many other scenarios. The table enables the ability of keeping judgment out of the reasoning by getting clarity on the perspective. This will help with the how leading to the why. Having this understanding as a resource in dealing with scenarios where perspective and perception are separated and creating conflict will be quickly, calmly, and respectfully clarified through due diligence and fact-finding, realigning perceptions to specific perspectives. Miracles and phenomenons. Now this is one that, has the great debate and is really out there, so we want to kind of draw it down to bring it into understanding it for perspective and perception scenarios. So, perspective and perception having the greatest distance between has the ability to fall in these categories, and now context having clarity issues. So if we were to say clarity equaled the existence of, then the existence of would equal a lottery winner, and the lottery winner would equal a miracle and a phenomenon, because the odds are about the same. I mean, if you got a guy that's got 1 in 302 million chances of winning, the simple fact remains, we read and hear and can look up lottery winners all over the states, and it is something that happens. And if you want to look at the definition of miracle and phenomenon, I'm not replacing it with this. All I'm saying is simply the odds are the same. So if you're going to look at it for a perspective or a perception or a scenario that someone's drawing the conclusion that it's impossible, that would be a weird phenomenon, or you would need a miracle for this to happen. Well, I mean, if we're going to admit that a lottery winner does happen and the odds are the same of these, then we would have to at least assume that what they're saying on the surface has to have it if the other due diligence required shows up in the character, the history, and the credibility to back up that perspective. And then it should be some of the simplicity in deductions that can define that answer. Explaining the how. Another resource for the mind. This exercise deals with having a scenario that shows how perspective can need assistance due to its false perception. The issue at hand is from 3 guests at a local hotel being cheated is the perspective or perception. When the guests arrived at the hotel, they were told the cost of staying would be $30. To them, $10 each. After the guests were heading up to their room, the desk clerk realized he had made a mistake and called the bellhop over and gave him $5 to return to the guests. On the way to the guests, the bellhop decided instead of the 3 guests dividing the $5 between them, he would give them $1 each back and keep $2 for a tip. The guests then paid $9 each for the room, so 9 times 3 is $27, and the 2 the bellhop kept for a tip makes $29. We definitely have a perspective/perception situation. False perceptions. As it stands, the perception is each guest gave $10 for the $30 room. The bellhop gave each one of them $1 back, claiming they paid $9 each for the room, equaling the $27, plus the 2 he kept for the tip, equaling $29. Now, we know this has to be a false perception. We know that we gave him $30, therefore returning the 5 should still equal the $30. But you can see here that it does not. Now, this does not make this statement true because it's math. Now, that's the false perception. Clarity. Now, taking the perspective that gives the perception and changing the context and how it is interpreted. Let's now look at it from another perspective. $30 minus the $5 the desk clerk gave to the bellhop equals $25